whole industry based around us trying to outsource our experience of our lives to things that happened to us from outside. Hold on, what else is being served up to me? What the heck am I absorbing here? Because this awareness is going to be absolutely key to all the stuff that is going to help you transform your experience of your day-to-day life. I want you to be happy. I want you to understand what happiness is and to be able to ride through all the ups and downs of life. It's been a really, really interesting week in the UK, at least. But this is, what's been happening here is not a national, unique phenomenon. It's very common all around the world. But I think we have had some really, really interesting examples in this last week to 10 days where I feel as if everything that I'm talking about is appearing all over the place. Now, of course, part of that is that we have a thing called the reticular activating system. And what that does is it means that we see what we're thinking about, we see what matters to us, what we're paying attention to at the time. So that could be as simple as, when you're first pregnant, you see babies everywhere. Or when you're looking to buy a car and you want to buy a particular make of car, you see that make of car all over the place. We are designed to, because there is just, quite frankly, so much stuff around us, we can't possibly notice everything. And so our brains operate by moving towards the things that are in our minds. And actually, I'll come on to that in a moment after this, because the thing that I'm keeping seeing is obviously the stuff that is in my mind just now. And outside of my normal work and my normal life, what is in my mind is Avril, the book, doing these podcasts, which is new to me, and writing and preparing material, etc. And so I'm thinking all the time about what is it like for women, midlife women these days. And the examples that have come up have been like the universe knocking me on the head and saying, look at this, look at this, look at this, because we got a new Prime Minister this week, and he appeared in Downing Street with his lovely, accomplished wife, very accomplished in her own right, degree from Cambridge, businesswoman, sits on the boards of a number of very prestigious organisations, multilingual, very attractive, not that that matters, but she is nonetheless very attractive, and also had a voluntary double mastectomy because her female side of her line carries the genetic unfortunate breast cancer gene. So a woman of some stoicism, has 3 children, has been married for 25 years, and the commentary that hit the internet and social media, and even actually in the media from, pretty, you would have thought respectable, and you would almost have thought sensible people, was she chose a shit dress and she's got a fat tummy. And most of those came from women. And I'm not going to labour the point about how that was all unnecessary and horrific and awful. I just want to say that I had 2 thoughts, and they came consecutively, one after the other. The first one was, what a shower of bitches. Why on earth are women so awful to each other? And then the second thought was me remembering, not that I need to remember because it's present in my life all the time, the wonderful female friendships I have, but relatively recently I was, after routine scanning, diagnosed with lung cancer, and very quickly moved through the testing regime into them saying, we think it would be curative with surgery. And so just over 2 months ago, I was in hospital. I had half a lung removed. I got back out. I live on my own, and my female neighbours and friends were just astonishing, as they always are, and as we always have been to each other. I didn't need to ask them to help. They chipped in, they did my shopping, they brought food, they asked anything I wanted done, they did for me. And many things that I'd never asked for, they just did anyway. And also there was just the general undercurrent of love and care and attention. And I thought to myself, I would put money on it, good, solid, hard cash on it, that the vast majority of these women who online made appalling comments about the new Prime Minister's wife are also good, kind women who do lovely things for their friends and people, and who do lovely things for their friends and people without being asked. They see a need and they rush to fill it. I think women do this all over the world. Women see a need and they rush to help and they rush to do something about it, and they instinctively take action. They don't need to be asked to do it. And so we have this incredible, sad dichotomy where we have women saying quite genuinely cruel, appalling, horrific things to other women. And not just once, repeatedly doing it, making it a habit. It's almost like a fucking hobby for some of these people. And I'm not saying that men don't do it too, men do, but we're not talking about men just now. They have enough of our airspace. This is women. They almost make a hobby of it, where this is what they do in their spare time. Some of them have pseudonyms, some don't. Some of them are the next door neighbours of the people about whom they are spewing bile, and they are the same women who will pick your child up from the nursery if you're not well, who will make an extra meal if you're not able to do it, who will chip in and help when you're moving house and you're frustrated and you need someone to come and help you do boxes, who will go to the hospital appointment with you. Same women. And that particular reminder this week was really profoundly impactful for me, because I realised that what is causing these good, kind women generally, and I would have said 99.9% of them are exactly those women, normal, everyday women that you meet in the street, that you meet at the school gate, that you work alongside, perfectly nice, loving, kind women who turn into rabid harridans online at times. What is turning them into that is a deep, deep frustration with their lives and the world around them. And it may not even be that they recognise it as being their lives. They may think, well, their life's pretty much okay, generally speaking. But I don't believe that you can operate inside the world and the system as it is without having a sense of rage and without having to find an outlet for that rage and bile. And one outlet is the obvious one. Another woman, seemingly an easy target, perhaps someone doing better than you. So I'm not making a judgment apart from to say, just fucking stop it, would you? Because it's appalling. But I'm saying from a place of understanding, I think I know where this is coming from. This is partly what Feral is about. It's about saying, can we understand ourselves? Can we work out why we do what we do? And the other thing that that happened this week was in this noticing, in this reticular activating system going, Avril, pay attention to the things that matter. I noticed such a lot of commentary about women leaving work, being impacted very heavily by ageism as well as sexism, and a real sense of panic around it, that what on earth was happening. Which is worrisome, because the dialogue online is predominantly reporting unpleasant or negative statistics and data. So I need to be able to drag you back from that, because as I said in my earlier episode about this, and as I say in the book, I want this to be about you entirely yourself, you being the subject of your own life, not the object of someone else's, and being able to focus on yourself to the point that you making yourself happy, genuinely happy. I don't mean happy at the expense of others happy, genuinely, warm-heartedly, compassionately, expansively happy. That is what I want for you, because out of that comes literally everything else. At the end of the last episode, I asked you, if you were watching, and if you haven't watched it, never mind, you can always go back and see it again. I asked you to just pay attention to what feelings were arising in you, in your day-to-day, just to notice what feelings were popping up. And not to make any judgment about them, not to go journaling about them or writing them down, just to say, can you actually pay attention to your feelings? And when you experience a feeling, to see in that brief moment when you notice it, can you notice a thought that might be running behind this feeling or causing this feeling? Is there an internal dialogue? Is there an internal narrative running that is making you feel this way? I mean, I can tell you for a fact that without being inside the heads of the women I was talking about earlier, there's an internal dialogue running in them when they are furiously typing their unpleasant comments about someone else, and that those thoughts and feelings are coming from a dark and difficult place. But we all have all those thoughts and feelings. The trouble is we don't notice them half the time, and we feel, I think, as if life just happens to us. And when I was explaining how sort of from the age of 50 forward, I effectively reinvented myself. I rediscovered, or perhaps discovered for the first time, who I was and what I was about. And that involved really getting to grips with understanding why I was the way I was and unpicking the current narrative, my own current narrative and society's narrative, and trying to discover what was actually true and real. I talked in the earlier episode about the fact that I feel that women get settled or put into one of three boxes. There's what I call the goddess box, which I have rewatched the previous episode, and I thought, well, there's going to be some people in there not liking me at all because I was talking rather glibly about women who are like, let it all hang out, we're fabulous, the world just has to work it out and notice us. And I don't mean it unkindly, but the world isn't going to notice, I'm afraid. The world is far too interested in itself. And then I talked about the patriarchy, fighting the patriarchy, being constantly in battle against the injustice of the system. And of course, that's a lot of what I'm seeing on social media just now, particularly on LinkedIn. If you go onto all the business forums, what you see is a lot of very real and very true data about, it looks as if the LinkedIn algorithm is skewed towards men and away from women. I think it's probably more likely it's skewed in terms of particular types of narrative. And I know that the LLMs now are being trained mainly from the male perspective. It's mainly male coders, and there's a very, very real challenge in there. A wonderful woman called Jane Evans is doing a lot of work on this with, I think, Cindy Gallop as well. It's worth looking them up, because it is rage-inducing when you realise that now AI is actually creating, when you think about it, you ask AI a question, it comes back, it gives you its opinion, it gathers everyone else's opinion and it feeds it back to you. But if what it's being fed in the first place is from a male and systemically patriarchal system, we're going to get that back. So there is a real challenge about what's being generated there. So that's the second thing that we're seeing. But the third one, and the one that I want to focus on today, is not fixation, but certainly tendency towards over-therapizing ourselves and over-therapizing our language. I certainly know that for a lot of women in their midlife, what do we call midlife? It can start at the end of your 30s and it can go on well into your mid-50s. And I'm sure people are still in their 60s and feeling like I'm describing, which is a bit shit. Who am I? What am I here for? Is this it? In that period of life, you're often surrounded by younger people, children, other people's children, and the younger generation, as we know, are far more familiar with therapy speak than we were in our time. And that is in many ways a very good thing. More able to discuss, to put words to feelings, to put words to situations. However, and it is a very big however, I'm certainly aware that when I moved into my adulthood and into my middle age, it was becoming more popular to go for therapy. Nothing like as much as it is now, but it was becoming more popular. And I remember in desperation at one point going to see a therapist who asked about my very early life, because as we all know, now my early life was, I think everyone thinks their life is relatively unusual. Perhaps some people think it's mundane, but most of us have stories about how we grew up, where we came from, where our parents came from. We love telling stories about ourselves. You'll notice that children, and I notice it with my grandchildren, especially my granddaughter, her favourite activity is to have me sit beside her when she's in the bath, and she can ask me, "Grandma, when you were little," questions, and it's an endless series of questions. She wants stories about everything. Now, I was born illegitimate in 1952, and my biological mother had an illegitimate child, then she'd got married and had a little boy, and then she'd had an affair and had me, and then she got pregnant again, and eventually she gave me away for adoption, and I was adopted when I was 14 months. And I told this story, that's not the complete story, but that's part of it. I told this story to the therapist, and she latched onto it almost with a sense of glee, that this must be a profoundly confounding reason for me suffering from periods of depression, etc. And it took me about 4 sessions with her before I suddenly thought, just a minute, this woman is trying to tell me that my life is scripted because of what happened when I was young. And was it impacted? Undoubtedly. Are there characteristic behaviours I have and unconscious motivations I have that came from there? Undoubtedly, and we'll go on to that and how we acquire those things. But it wasn't a script that I had to keep reading, and it wasn't a script I had to keep performing. And yet I think for so many of us, therapy speak, what do they call it now? Spiritual bypassing? I'm not even entirely sure what that is, but there's a whole industry based around us trying to outsource our experience of our lives to things that happened to us from outside. And the crux of feral, the starting point of feral, is to slightly rattle the adhesion of that thought in your mind, in that you can learn to understand yourself well enough and to understand the things that did impact you and did make you when you were little, and you can work out how to use them to your advantage and how to ease out the ones that no longer serve you. Because as long as we are performing to a script that we think is chiseled into stone instead of written in invisible ink, we'll be wedded to a personality, a set of outcomes that we just simply don't have to have. And I can tell you for an absolute fact that the script that I might have been considered I was being handed as a very small person is not the script I ended up with at all. And that's not because I'm special, because I'm very, very far from special. In fact, if I was special, I would have worked this out a damn sight sooner. It wouldn't have taken me to 74. I think I worked it out a bit before 74, but I'm only articulating it now. So let's just have a little look. I'd like you to have a little look. There's going to be a link attached to this video, and what it will do is it will take you to a very simple test. Now, many of you will have done all manner of profiling tests in the past. You might have done Myers-Briggs, you might have done all of those various ones at work, where you're in a red hat or a blue hat, or you're a lion or a tiger or a dolphin, or you're a god or a goddess or a serf or whatever. And these are all ways of trying to describe what we do. And actually, we all love that sort of thing, because even if you're not into horoscopes, I bet every now and again, if you get a link served up to you and it says, you're a Tory and let me tell you what's going to happen to you, you probably hang around on that link for longer than you might intend. Or maybe that's just me. But there is a very, very inbuilt drive for us to understand ourselves and understand what our lives are for. Jonathan Haidt's wonderful book, The Righteous Mind, talks about how we are actually looking for meaning, and we're looking for a way that we can justify our existence. In fact, if you can ever see his TED Talk, it's very much worth doing, because in his TED Talk, he also presents it in two different ways, in a slightly long form version. When I say long form, I think it's 15 minutes. Then he does the short form version where it's very heavily visual with less words. And it gives you such a visceral understanding of how we absorb information. It's very, very useful for you if you're on this feral journey with me, or if you're thinking about this feral journey, is gaining an awareness of how you are influenced by what is going on around you. And watching Jonathan Haidt, as Haidt, watching Jonathan Haidt's TED Talk, I think, is a really interesting one to do, if only to see the way information can be presented to you in an extremely impactful, and then being able to reflect on, hold on, what else is being served up to me? What the heck am I absorbing here? Because this awareness is going to be absolutely key to all the stuff that is going to help you transform your experience of your day-to-day life, which is what all of this is about. This isn't about changing the world, and it's not even about changing you. It's changing how you experience the day-to-day of your life, because I want you to be happy. I want you to understand what happiness is, and to be able to ride through all the ups and downs of life with a degree of balance. So let's just go back to this business of what happens when you're little. So we arrive in the world with our own genetic predisposition. You know, we can have twins turn up, we've got the same DNA. One is a very quiet introverted twin, one is a very extroverted. There are certain personality traits that we have that just rock up. And in the very early years of our lives, when we are non-verbal, and before our prefrontal cortex is kicked in for us to be able to have any sort of executive function about how we think and how we make decisions, we're operating entirely on feelings, totally feelings driven, because it's really all that we have to process through. And this is where it gets very, very interesting, because we are only designed as little people to try and stay alive. Now, we all know that when we're born as human babies, we're utterly bloody not fit for purpose. I mean, truly not fit for purpose. You get lambs and horses, you know, they're born and they're on their feet almost immediately, because they have to be able to survive. Dogs, kittens take longer. They have to be beside the mother longer to be fed, to be able to move around, etc. But, you know, not much has the longevity of complete dependence on the parent than a human baby. The human child needs a huge amount of time before they are able to be let loose in the world. I mean, an extraordinary length of time. And the only two things that a very small baby is actually scared of right at birth are loud noises and falling. So a big loud noise will startle it, and if a baby thinks it's falling, its arms will go out. But beyond that, we don't arrive naturally fearful. But we learn very quickly what brings to us the things we need, what brings the mother to us to feed us, what brings comfort to us when we're crying, what keeps us comfortable, what gives us attention, what allows us to see a smile rather than a frown. We learn these things extremely quickly as very, very, very small children. And we also learn very, very, very quickly what doesn't. And we develop over those very early years. I mean, some say up to the age of 7, but certainly it carries on longer than that. But those very early years are important. We learn how we have to be in order to be safe and secure and happy, and although we don't have the word for it, loved. And we modify what we do in order to remain safe and loved. So for some children, this might be that they're the entertainer of the family. Some might have to become very quiet or very helpful. Some might naturally be peacekeepers in families. This actually does happen. Children become the miniature adults inside a family regime. Some are encouraged, and you might consider the encouragement to be in inverted commas, to be very strong and independent, or to be very successful. And whatever it is that is coming from an external environment, the child will develop unconscious motivations that will govern their behaviour. And those unconscious motivators are the why they do what they do. It's not the what they do, it's the why they do. Why is that child so noisy and aggressive? Why is that child always rushing to help? Why is that child so desperate that they must pass every little test, or that everything has to be absolutely perfect around them? That's how we start to develop the way we run our operating system through life. And getting an understanding of that is hugely important for a number of reasons. First of all, there's no right or wrong, there's no good or bad, there's no better or worse, it just is what it is. But those unconscious motivators that we develop when we're young run the rest of our lives. And when they are being met, whatever they are, we will feel happy and confident and creative and collaborative. And when they are not being met, we will be the opposite. We will be uncomfortable, fearful, jealous, uncollaborative, and it will feel shit. When everything is being met, when our unconscious motivators are being met, we're in what's called our best self. And we know we're in our best self because we are all of those lovely, confident, happy, positive things. We're also able in that situation to take external feedback more comfortably because we have a strong sense of self and we are not feeling under threat. But when they're not being met, we're in what's called shadow. We're in our shadow behaviour and our shadow self. And in that shadow, we're having a miserable time and we're interacting very uncomfortably with the world. And I use in my work with businesses and corporates and CEOs, I actually use a test for this, which is called Print Survey. But Print came out of a thing called Enneagram. And Enneagram has much, much, much longer, deeper roots. And I don't want you to go spending more money. As I said earlier on, I'm not trying to persuade people to spend money. So I have got for you in this little link below a test, a free test, and it will allow you to go through it. It's quite quick, and it will give you an indication of the unconscious motivators that may be running your life. Now, it's not the full test. You can actually go to the Enneagram Institute and do the full test. I think it's £49 or something like that. But, just as an example, just go and try this and see. Because I asked you in the previous episode to spend some time paying attention to your feelings and to notice what feelings you get. And particularly, I know that you will have noticed your negative feelings: fear, discomfort, jealousy, distrust, whatever it is, because we tend not to notice our happy feelings so much. It's just a natural default position, sadly, at the moment. We're going to change that, don't worry. And then to think, well, might there be a thought attached to that? Was I having a thought which either preceded or immediately came from the feeling, walked in alongside it? And is that thought along the lines of a self-criticism or a criticism of someone else, or expression of a fear or a doubt, or anything of that nature? So I asked you to pay attention to the feeling, and now I'm saying to you, try this little test. Read it and read the outcome of it. As I say, it's a very light touch one, it's free, and it's the starting point for a level of self-understanding which is not therapy, but which is uniquely valuable in helping you to understand yourself. And once you understand yourself, it is quite extraordinary what you can do. I started talking about those awful comments that were being made by the new Prime Minister's wife. And I said that I know, absolutely in my heart, I know that a lot of those comments were made by good, kind women who do lovely things for other people. And I know that they are doing them from their shadow self. And if they're doing them from their shadow self, and they don't work out why they are doing that, they will continue to do it. And whatever level of pain, discomfort, self-criticism or judgment they were trying to heap upon someone else, they are doing the same to themselves. I know that this comes from, in that moment, pain, because that's how we operate. We do move towards happiness, but we move a damn sight faster away from pain, and we express it more easily. So the next step for you is to try that little Enneagram free test that I've given you, and then just sit with that for a little bit. Don't take it as gospel, but ask yourself some questions around it. If you want details of the more detailed one that you can do with the Enneagram Institute, I wouldn't suggest print because it's quite expensive to do, and you need to have a sort of guided facilitation through the end of it. But if you want to do that, then you can drop me an email. My email will be at the bottom of this too. It's on my website, and I will send you the link for the full Enneagram one. But the starting point for everything is self-awareness. And don't be scared of self-awareness, because you can actually find, as I did to my intense surprise, that I actually quite liked what I found. So till next time, enjoy doing the test.